News Central now at this hour begins in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, where former vice president and presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, in the last general elections, Atiku Abubakar, says he is committed to unraveling the truth regarding the academic records controversy involving President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Speaking at a press conference in Abuja on Thursday to address the Chicago State University certificate issue, he stated that the integrity of the nation is at stake. Atiku explained that the elections are the foundation of a democracy and that the results are not as important as the process, adding that the outcome of the last elections have put Nigeria's reputation at global risk. According to the PDP candidate, he is not fighting a personal battle, but the quest is for the enthronement of truth and justice and to hold leaders accountable. He called on political traditionals and religious leaders, as well as all lovers of Nigeria, to join in the campaign to uphold moral and uprightness in the country.
Is not for or about Atiku Abubakar. It is a quest for the enthronement of truth, morality, justice, and accountability in our public affairs. In line with this, let me call on all well-meaning Nigerians, leaders of thought, our religious leaders, our traditional leaders, our community leaders, our political leaders, and in particular, Governor Peter Obi of the Labour Party and Governor Rabi Ukwankwaso of the NNPP, and the leaders of every political party in Nigeria, and indeed every single person who loves this country, as I do, and who wishes nothing but the best for this country as I do, to join me in this campaign to enshrine probity, accountability, and the basic principles of justice, morality, and uprightness in our country and in our government.
To discuss this further, we are joined by Eric Omare, legal practitioner. Thank you so much for your time, Eric.
It's my pleasure to be here.
All right, Eric, let's get straight to it. How do legal experts view the constitutional and also legal implications of the delay in establishing the credibility of certificates presented by candidates for public office, as highlighted by Atiku Abubakar?
Well, in my view, there is really no difficulty in establishing the authenticity of the credentials submitted by candidates who contest election in Nigeria to the Independent National Electoral Commission. My reason for saying so is that generally, when you are preparing for an election, beyond having a campaign committee that deals with issues of finance and logistics, you must also consider the legal aspect of it because it forms part and parcel of the elections. So when you have a legal team as part of your campaign paraphernalia, the implication is that the legal team will consider the legal implications pre and post election. So a prepared candidate ought to plan for post-election even before the conduct of the election. What that means is that what Alhaji Atiku Abubakar is doing now is something that ought to have been done even before the conduct of the election. So that when you are not comfortable with the outcome, you ought to have submitted within 21 days after the conduct of the election. So I don't think that it is a problem with our judiciary per se, but it is a lack of preparedness on the part of the candidate who seeks to establish his case within the confines of our law. In this case, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and others who are in court.
Now, some consider Atiku's instance or insistence to seek redress in U.S. courts after elections as baseless afterthoughts. Now, since he could have done same before the elections held. Now, what's your take on this particular issue?
I agree with that. I agree with the school of thought that what he's doing is an afterthought. About the addition to that is that not that beyond being an afterthought is also a demonstration of somebody who is a bad loser, which is the general context in which we would like to situate what is happening. the truth is that a lot of people who approach the election tribunals in Nigeria are not doing so because they genuinely believe that they won the election, but because of the spirit of being bad sportsmanship. So I agree that it is an afterthought, and also it is a mark of bad sportsmanship as far as I'm concerned, in my humble opinion.
All right. Now, considering the constitutional nature of the issue, what role can or should the Supreme Court play in resolving challenges relating to the eligibility of candidates and the credibility of presented certificates also?
Well, under the 1999 Constitution, the Supreme Court has a constitutional role to play with respect to determination of who is the president, vice president, governor, or deputy governor. The Constitution says that the Court of Appeal shall be the election petition tribunal for the purpose of a presidential election, while the Supreme Court will be the final court, just like in other situation, with respect to determination of appeal arising from the decision of the Court of Appeal. So the Supreme Court will have a last say, and I understand that Atiku Abubakar and other aggrieved presidential candidates, whose cases were thrown out by the Court of Appeal, as appealed to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court will look at the appeal. The only additional point is whether in the circumstance of Atiku's application to release or to have access to President Tinubu's educational qualifications, whether there will be need for him to make an application for additional documents to be admitted. Well, that is up to his legal team to decide. And when they get to the bridge, I'm very sure that those on the other side will also respond. But again, at the end of the day, it boils down to what is the relevance of that document to the issue before the court. And again, also the question of pleading, because cases in Nigeria, and just like many other Commonwealth jurisdictions, are determined on what we call pleadings. Pleadings is what you submit to court. So it's not enough to say, I have access to one document. Did you plead it? Is that document relevant to the case that you have presented before the court? So those are some of the things that the court take into consideration. But most importantly, at the Supreme Court, being an appellate court, for it to admit any document, it must be an extreme circumstance. So he who is bringing the document must show that there exists an extreme circumstances to admit that document. Whether that will be done or not is up to the Supreme Court to determine. I cannot preempt them, and it's also up to the appellants to convince the Supreme Court to so do. But under our constitutional jurisprudence, the Supreme Court has a final say in who becomes in the determination of whether someone has been validly elected as president or not.
All right. Now, how will a prolonged post-election battle, a legal battle in particular, impact or derail governance and leadership in Nigeria?
Well, the part of the reforms to our electoral laws has been to quicken the process of resolution of post-election disputes. You will recall that former Governor Peter Obi took 3 years in court to be able to recover his mandate from Mr. Chris Ngige. And arising from such experiences, the laws were amended, the Constitution, the Electoral Act were amended to provide time frame for the determination of post-election matters. At the tribunal level, it's 180 days. On appeal, is 60 days. My view is that the present provisions are sufficient. It will be difficult for election matters, all of them to be determined before the winner is sworn in. The reason being that will entail that elections will now come up much earlier. And that also constitutes distraction. Because when you say distraction to governance, it doesn't necessarily mean the winner. It also means party in power. The moment electoral campaign starts, you can no longer do anything related to governance. Then again, there are some that are going for second tenure. So whether you do it before election or after election, it will also affect governance. I think that the problem we have is not a matter of law per se. The problem we have is implementation of these laws. Politicians must imbibe the spirit of being sportsmen. In other words, when you contest election and you know that you fairly did not win the election, you should allow the process to go without distracting those who have won election with post-election litigations. So then again, we need to also work on the transparency of our electoral process, though that will not stop those who are not comfortable, who are not good sportsmen from going to court. But once the process is transparent, I think more transparent as it should be. I'm not saying that it's not presently transparent, but we can improve on what we have, especially introduction of technology and some other things that will make it very obvious as to whether somebody has won election or not. Those post-election and pre-election disputes will be resolved. But above all, I think that we must politicians must imbibe the spirit of good sportsmanship.
All right, now I would just ask you two questions rolled into one. Now, the first being, to what extent does the delayed resolution of such issues affect the integrity of Nigeria's constitutional and electoral process? And also, in the light of the Atiku versus Tinubu and the recent events, what reforms in electoral processes will you propose to ensure a more efficient and timely resolution of matters concerning candidates' eligibility?
Well, what is happening does not in any way, in my view, call to question the integrity of the electoral process. It's part and parcel of the process. Pre- and post-election litigations are part and parcel of the process. And it also comes within the wider context of the rule of law. The essence of rule of law, a part of it is that when people are aggrieved, they should have a platform to approach to express their grievances. Some of the grievances may be genuine, some of them may not be genuine, and it's up to the court to decide. So what is happening, in my view, does not call to question the integrity of our electoral process or the laws or even the judicial process. Then on likely reforms, well, the hallmark or one of the significant things about humanity is that nothing is permanent. We'll continue to improve on what we have. So there are some areas that demands reform. In my view, one of the areas that we need to look at is the introduction of technology in the electoral process. It has worked in some other organizations, not at bigger level like INEC elections. And I believe that with the experience, for example, in the NBA, the Nigerian Bar Association, we do our elections through electronic means. Even some other smaller organizations have done it. And I think that it is time for Nigeria at the wider level to introduce technology into our electoral process. I think that is necessary. From my experience in litigating cases, criminal cases, cases where technology has been employed in investigation are easy to resolve by the court than cases where there's no technology. And I also believe that introduction of technology in the electoral process will aid in addressing some of those post-election challenges.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Eric Omare, legal practitioner, once again, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.